Hi, everyone. In today's episode of the Depolarizers, I'm in conversation with Congressman Brad Schneider. Congressman Schneider represents the northern suburbs of Chicago in Illinois Congressional District 10. He's a member of the House Ways and Means and Foreign Affairs Committees, and he currently serves as the chair of the New Democrat Coalition, a caucus of 115 center-left House Democrats focused on breaking the gridlock in Washington to deliver results for the American people. In the 2024 election cycle, New Dems cut into the House Republicans' majority by flipping 9 seats from red to blue and electing 25 new members. Under Congressman Schneider's leadership, New Dems just announced a new vision for the path forward for the party and the country, focused on economic growth and opportunity, healthy and safe communities, and strong national security. Thanks for listening. Congressman Schneider, it's so nice to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I was delighted to see that you are a comeback kid, kind of like our current president, right?
I don't love that comparison, but yes, I won an election. I lost. I learned losing isn't fatal, and I came back, and I'm serving now in my 6th term.
I love it. 6th term is impressive and very cool. So, you had a competitive election in the Chicago suburbs where you serve in Illinois 10. And to your point, you were beaten by a Republican opponent in 2014 after winning in 2012. And then you were elected again in 2016, the same year that Trump was elected. So if you want to talk through what lessons you learned from running in a competitive district at the time, and then what has been your change in response to the political environment from Trump's election in 2016 to being reelected in 2024.
Sure, I'll touch on a couple of things. I think the first thing, running in a competitive race, I ran against the same person all 3 times. He was a one-term incumbent when I ran against him the first time. I won by 1. He won the second round when I was the incumbent. He was the challenger by 2. And then in the third in 2016, I won by 5. A good candidate, a moderate Republican, and as moderate Democrat. The campaigns were as much about substance as anything, certainly compared to what you're seeing in campaigns today. And one of the most important lessons I learned, which has helped me as a representative in the work I do, is the discipline of staying focused on hearing what are the priorities and concerns of the people we're seeking to represent as a representative, making sure we're connecting with the people. In Congress, in Washington, I know that my first priority is always, what am I doing to represent the folks of the 10th District of Illinois? And then more broadly, Illinois as a whole. I work with the delegation. And then obviously in Congress or the nation. And I talk about being on 3 teams: Team USA first, Team Congress, and this is an important moment for that, making sure I'm protecting the Article 1 responsibilities and prerogatives of the legislative branch as conceived by the founders to create those checks and balances that are being really challenged. And so I focus on that. And that, win by 1, lose by 2, win by 5, but then I win by 30 in high 20s, and then post-redistricting, it's a very different district, but I'm still winning by 20.
Which is exciting and speaks to your constituents' love for you, I guess.
I think it speaks to what my team does, making sure that we stay connected to our constituents.
So you were recently elected chair of the New Dems caucus. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So what did that election mean to you to lead your peers in this caucus? And what is your vision for the New Dems and House Democrats?
Thanks for the question. It means a lot. Look, I was a supporter of the New Dems before I came to Congress. I was excited to be a part of the New Dems. When I came in 2013, there were 42 New Dems in the Democratic caucus. At the end of the last Congress, we had grown to 100. And of those 100, 85 came back. We protected 85 of the 87 incumbents were running, but we also added 25 new members. And since this Congress started, we've added 5 as well. So that's how we get to 115. So I've watched the coalition grow because of how we approach our work, but also what we're doing in that work. The approach, I say moderate's a style more than a position. It's working with people. We work with everyone across the Democratic caucus, but we also are willing when we can to reach across the aisle to get things done. And it's about getting things done. And then our vision, and I've been working very hard as chair, working with my leadership team to articulate that vision in a way that resonates first with our members, our 115 members, but also with the people who we work with and then the broader country as a whole. And we rolled out a platform with three pillars: a growing economy, clearing away obstacles, creating pathways for opportunities, quality jobs where people can not just make a living, but get ahead in life, provide for their family. Very much focused on safe and healthy neighborhoods. What does that mean? Is that families are confident and comfortable in their homes, feel secure going to work or sending their kids to school, going to play, that their kids are getting quality education, that they have quality, affordable health care where they live from doctors and professionals they trust when they need it. And very much focused on making sure that we have strong national security, national defense, that we're protecting Americans' national interests here at home, but also making sure Americans are safe around the world and our priorities are protected as well.
So you penned an op-ed in Fox News recently, and I'm going to read something that you wrote, which I thought was cool. So as the costs of Trump's chaos economy become increasingly clear, Americans are looking to congressional Democrats to fight for them. They want us to defend the balance and powers established in our Constitution, to uphold the rule of law, and importantly, to offer an alternative vision for a better path forward. That is exactly what the New Dem Coalition, a group of 115 pragmatic center-left House Democrats dedicated to finding common sense solutions, is offering. As a growing majority in the House Democratic Caucus, New Dems are prepared to lead from the center with strong voices and bold policy ideas. We are championing a unity agenda for our party and the country that can rally Americans across the political spectrum. So very much some what you just mentioned. But we're just curious, how has this unity agenda approach been going thus far? And what are maybe some other goals of the New Dem Caucus that can be more specific to some of the current, meeting the moment, I guess, currently?
I think you can look at some recent examples of pulling people together and also meeting the moment. A few weeks ago, I partnered with Greg Casar, the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, sending a letter to the speaker talking about protecting Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, protecting it from the attacks of the Trump administration, of Elon Musk and his minions going through with their chainsaw, pruning trees by cutting at the trunk, so to speak. We had every member of the New Dem Coalition, but also every member of the Progressive Caucus sign on to that letter, because when you're focused on what matters to the broad public, to the voters, to the people we represent, you can create that unity. I think you look at some of the things we've been doing, not just in this Congress, but in previous Congresses, building those relationships, delivering a message, talking about how do we move the country forward, give people the confidence that their future is going to be better than what their parents sacrificed to give for us. People stand up, and you saw it last night. You saw it in Wisconsin. Right? When we are united, we can defeat the vast millions, the vast wealth of the richest man in the world trying to buy an election. Democrats can move that forward. But when we talk in caucus, when we talk in leadership meetings with Leader Jeffries, Catherine Clark, our whip, Pete Aguilar, our caucus chair, our voice is being heard. And our voice about talking about move forward, stand strong. I talk about how do we defy the Trump agenda and Project 2025 when we're in the minority, when we don't have the levers of power. It's keeping our faith in what we know this country can be and keeping our eyes focused on what we're trying to deliver, addressing the priorities of the American people with thoughtful, considered solutions that can be implemented not a decade from now, but can make a difference in their lives this year and going forward. And that's what we're doing.
Absolutely. And even to your note about what the caucus can do in a Republican majority, New Dems, I think in this Congress, more than half of all House Democrats are now members of the New Dem caucus. So how does that affect how do you wield your power, right? Since this is such a large caucus of Democrats in a Republican majority chamber, are you finding that it's helpful to do certain things with all of your members or some of your members, smaller factions of the bigger caucus, anything on that?
Well, so 115 is a big number. You can start with that number, but if I break it down into the individuals that make up that total, we have 115 members who bring a wealth of knowledge and know-how. They've got incredible experience. Some are long-term members of Congress. Some are serving their first term. As I mentioned, we have 25 New Dem members who are in their first term, but they bring that experience. So what we're trying to do is make sure we empower and unleash the talent that we have. And so within the New Dems, we've established 9 different working groups that reflect the pillars we talked about of a growing economy, healthy and safe neighborhoods, and strong national defense, national security. We've got an economic working group that's looking at clearing those obstacles and investing, bringing manufacturing back, responding to and addressing Trump's whiplash and whipsaw approach to tariffs. We have a housing and infrastructure working group. We have a rural revitalization working group. It's those working groups that really empower the members to make a difference. But we're also supporting our members in their various work within the committee structure. Several of our committee chairs are New Dems, which really is an extraordinary breach of security, the signal gate. And you had folks communicating on a non-secure, at least a non-government secure platform, and then inadvertently including a journalist. And that journalist could have been not from the Atlantic, but from China Daily News or whomever. It could have been anyone. That's a real concern. And who leads the charge in calling it out? But you've got the chairs of Armed Services, Foreign Affairs, Oversight, and Intelligence, not the chairs, the ranking members, the leading Democrats in all of those committees, putting out a joint letter, all four are New Dems. So that's how we have an influence. We make sure that we're giving everyone the platform to communicate. We're providing resources to help them be better at what they do. We share information together, and then we stay engaged with leadership.
I love that. So this podcast is called The Depolarizers because we're passionate about depolarizing elected officials who effectively, help depolarize our politics through behavior and policy and messaging and whatnot. So how do you find, or would you say, are New Dems leading depolarization efforts among voters and also even among members of the House? You mentioned, like you have different coalition groups with other Democrats in the House. And so just curious, what does it look like for depolarizing efforts in the caucus?
Again, start with the people who make up the New Democrat Coalition, the 115 members. The reason I think one of the reasons they're attracted to the New Dems is the way we do approach our job in the coalition is the way they approach their job. They're not the flamethrowers. They're not, often people talk about workhorses and show horses. New Dem members are the workhorses. We roll up our sleeves, we get it done. And we all got here to this position as representatives, members of Congress, because we have succeeded in our prior careers, whether that was in business or law or medicine or agriculture, whatever the case may be, working with others, understanding that many of us often use the old African parable, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We know we go further when we work together. So just naturally, we have people who come in and don't adopt, they bring that approach with them. And so these are people who work together within the coalition. But if you look at our members, you're going to see they're the ones who are wandering the floor, talking to Republican colleagues, looking for those opportunities where we may disagree on a lot of issues, but if we can find common ground to move forward for the benefit of our constituents, for our country, we can do that as well. I'm on the Ways and Means Committee. I work very closely. One of the bills that was passed on suspension, meaning it had overwhelming majority in the House on Monday, was a bill I worked with on Randy Feenstra that just makes it easier for people when there's a simple math error on their tax return to correct, to get the information, understand what it is, and set things right. Common sense stuff. It's not going to change the world. It's not going to save the planet, but it's going to make people's lives a little bit easier. Those are the things we work at doing together. So that's here. And then going home, if you look at our members and how they talk at home, especially New Dem members, they're home having town halls. They're talking to our neighbors and our folks at home. We're hearing the anger. Hopefully it's not personal directed at us individually, but it's directed at Washington. We hear that anger. We talk about it. I say when I'm home, I run as a Democrat. I represent everybody. Democrats, Republicans, whether you voted for me, you didn't vote for me, or you didn't vote at all, we represent everybody. And I think that's the style that the New Dems, just the way we engage at home. And that's why, again, as I mentioned, 85 of 87 incumbents who ran last year in a difficult year for Democrats came back to Congress.
Yeah. And even to your point about engaging with constituents and even people who aren't voting, very important, obviously, but concerning to see that national support for Democrats has hit like historic low, right? We're in the trenches and in the dumps with sentiment, even among our own voters. So maybe what would you say New Dem's response is to this problem among voters, that Democratic sentiment is so low, even with people in our own party?
I think we got to be careful. I think there's a great frustration with government in general. There was a lot of frustration in the last election about whether it was President Biden and the transition of his candidacy to Vice President Harris. A lot of reasons for people to be frustrated, and we hear that. At the same time, I'll point to the election last night in Florida. Even though Democrats lost, they closed the gap. There were two special elections in Florida. One, Democrats did 22% better than in November, and the other one 16% better. That's a moral victory or a Pyrrhic victory. It's not something you hang your hat on. Look at it more as a vector, as an arrow pointing in the direction that, yes, we're hearing people are mad at the Democrats. They're not happy with the Republicans either. And then you point to Wisconsin, where you had a big victory for, that was a nonpartisan race, but it clearly was Democrats versus Republicans. You look in Pennsylvania in the special Senate state house election, where a Democrat won in a region for the first time since the 19th century, more than 100 years. That's a big deal. And so we need to look at that. We can't say everything's hunky-dory. Democrats lost last November. We lost the House, we lost in the Senate, and we lost the White House. There was a rebuke. Don't take it as a rejection. And the Republicans, I think, are taking their hand too far. It wasn't an embrace of everything the Republicans were talking about. I think it was people wanting something different. They want to know that the future is going to get better, that life's going to get easier, that we can expect our standard of living to rise, that we can expect our kids to get educated safely and have a future that allows them to pursue and achieve their aspirations and not take a mountain of debt just to get there. They want to know that the government's putting their interests, their concerns, their priorities front and center, putting their interests first, but we can't ignore America's responsibility in the world either. And the more we talk about that, if we can demonstrate we understand how to govern, and I think New Dems have always done that. We're doing it. We're growing. I think the New Dems are in a great position to lead the charge for the Democrats to take the House back in 2026.
And I appreciate the optimism. However, I do think it's hard to compare a special election in March or April to a November election, because obviously special elections bring out different types of voters. So you are going to get the more engaged electorate in a special election like the ones we've had versus in November's general election. So I hear you, but not necessarily convinced.
And that's what I was trying to say. We cannot hang our hat on these elections.
Right.
We can take them as arrows pointing in a direction. Understand what they're pointing at, where they're pointing to, what these voters are saying to us. And as you said, these are the more engaged voters. We've got to be much better at connecting with the voters who engage sometimes only every 4 years. Those aren't going to be the ones who are going to get us elected next November or November of 26 to take back the House. It's those who are engaged every 2 years. And we've got to make sure that they hear from us, and this is the message New Dems are trying to deliver, that we hear their concerns, we're focused on their priorities, and we're going to deliver results that will make their life better.
100%. To that end, I don't know if you saw the New York Times editorial board recently put out an op-ed. It's called "The Democrats Are in Denial About 2024." And in it, they noted, in the aftermath of this comprehensive defeat, many party leaders have decided that they do not need to make significant changes to their policies or their message. They've instead settled on a convenient explanation for their plight, including excuses for post-pandemic inflation, international trends of incumbent losses, and voters not turning out when, even non-voters favor Trump. So to that end about, sentiment among voters for Democrats, and even the response to this specific charge for Democrats to change policies, messaging, and even priorities, because, even partners like More in Common have put out priority gaps among Democrats and Republicans. People think, Democrats prioritize different things, Republicans prioritize different things, and that's why they choose to support different parties. So how do you intend to lead New Dems in making some of these changes that New York Times and David Shore and other entities have suggested that lend itself to a general election versus special election victories?
No, I saw the editorial and I share the concern. I look at folks in my party, the Democratic Party, and say, no, we just didn't do enough. We should not do anything different. We should just do it more. If you do more of the same, you're going to get more of the same results. We have to do things different. We have to have a cold eye review of where we succeeded last time, but also where we failed. And we failed to take the majority in the House. We failed to hold the majority in the Senate. We failed to keep Donald Trump and Project 2025 out of the White House. And we're suffering the consequences of that now. And we can point that we only lost by the presidential elections by 1% or 2%. We lost. We started this conversation talking about how I won by 1, I lost by 2. People say, well, why did you lose? And I could point to a whole bunch of things. My answer is always the same. I lost because I got fewer votes. So what did I learn? Go out and get more votes. Get more votes by connecting with the people who are going to go to the polls and cast their ballots and make sure they cast their ballots for me. That means listening to them. That means understanding what matters to them. That means trying to help them appreciate what we're working on is going to make their lives better, their children's future better, their communities stronger, the country as a whole stronger. We need to focus on that. And there are principles that we can lay down that are just core to who we are. And they're core to who we are as a country. It was written in our Declaration of Independence that all of us are created equal, that we have rights to the aspirations of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But if we're all created equal, that means all of us. And we can talk about what that means. We have to talk about that means the pursuit of happiness is a growing economy, strong communities that we can feel safe living, walking to work, driving to work, or taking our kids to school. We have to meet people where they are. We have to hear what they're saying to us, and we have to speak to them in the language that they're speaking to us in. And if we can restore that type of leadership, which is what New Dems have been doing, you're going to see a coalition that grows from 42 a decade ago to 100 a year ago to 115 today, with more people wanting to join us. We flipped 9 seats last cycle from Republican to New Democrat. We showed how to do it. Learn from those lessons, but we have to take it all together and come up with a new strategy, not more of the same. It's build on what worked, look at what didn't work, fix what has to be fixed, and if it's not fixable, we're going to try new things.
Totally. I appreciate even your reference to, when you lost, you were like, look, it was a loss. I need to get more votes, right? So being very direct and explicit about needing to win, which is something that we emphasize at Welcome, is winning the middle. We make sure we, parties are in control when they win, right? But as the largest coalition of Democrats in the House, I imagine it's probably tricky for you to kind of talk about some of the intra-party challenges we're having, because even to the New York Times op-ed, like, we're basically in like an ideological tug of war, right, within the Democratic Party, right? We have progressives and we have centrists, right? And we believe at Welcome, when progressives and Democrats go too much to the left, it goes to the left of voters, and it makes people feel like, I'm a future former Democrat, right? Like people are saying those things. Like, I don't, the Democratic Party, I didn't leave the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party left me or whatever, right? So they have that to say, what do you feel is the best way to approach some of this tug of war, particularly from a New Dem perspective, where you do have members of your caucus who are more progressive than centrist at times in different issues and different matters concerning immigration or whatever. So I guess what is the Democratic centrism vision that New Dems have for the party, and how are you approaching some of the ideological tensions that we are experiencing right now?
Well, I think the central vision is to move forward together. And what I mean by that is, we all come from different districts. Every member has a district that is distinct. By definition, they're unique. It's understanding what's distinct about the district. And I can use my district in the northern suburbs of Chicago is even different than Sean Castan's or Bill Foster's or Raja Krishnamurthy's or Mike Quigley. And then you got more rural districts like Eric Sorensen or Nikki Brzezinski. And that's just Illinois, right? So you take it across the country. Within the New Dems, hearing and understanding and looking for that common ground. And in New Dems, that's what we constantly do. So when we talk to our progressive colleagues, it's finding where is their common ground. There are issues where there's no separation. The Democratic caucus believes in everyone's right to make their own decisions about their own bodies, about healthcare. So we're united on that. The idea of marriage equality, there's no debate in our caucus about that. We're all united on that. But when we start talking about economic issues, what's the best way to move the country forward to create those opportunities, we're going to have some distinctions. When we're talking about how to make sure that every American has access to quality health care, you mentioned Bernie Sanders before. He doesn't even identify as a Democrat, so I'm going to put him to the side. But what New Dems are talking about when we talk about healthcare is making sure that we're bending the cost curve, making medicines more affordable, making sure that there are more doctors in this country to provide the care that we need. But it's not just doctors, it's nurses, it's physical therapists, occupational therapists. Healthcare is taking all kinds of new meanings, working to make sure that when someone needs medication, there's a drugstore nearby where they can get it, and that when they get their bill for that medication, it's not going to put them into bankruptcy. There's lots of common ground, and it's not just reaching to our left, our progressive friends, it's reaching across the aisle and finding Republicans who will work with us. At the end of the day, we need 218. With 218, we can do anything.
Totally. I may come back to the 218 concept because I'm not totally convinced Democrats know what they would even do with the 218 majority right now. But anyway, going back to some of the ideological challenges, Liam, my co-founder, and I wrote a piece on our Substack Welcome Stack titled "The Awkward Politics of Evasion." So kind of referencing the awkward politics of evasion, referencing the politics of evasion paper that Elaine K. Mark and Bill Gostin wrote in the late 80s. We noted, the problem with bringing up these issues is that they divide the party. This is the awkward part of the awkward politics of evasion. It's uncomfortable to discuss whether your party priorities are off or alienating. It's easier to commit to showing up in communities, engaging on new platforms, and fighting misinformation. And due to the simple political nature of politics, it's also understandably awkward for members of the same party to openly disagree with one another on messaging, votes, and policy positions. So as Democrats kind of reckon with moments that are similar to what Elaine and Bill were seeing in the late 80s and why they wrote their paper, what is the New Dem vision for addressing some of the left's most critical issues among voters and not just evading the stuff that makes us uncomfortable?
I'm going to answer that personally before I talk about the New Dems, because it touches on both my experience and my philosophy of how to approach these things. I was a business advisor before coming to Congress. Oftentimes brought into businesses that were struggling, and the struggle could have been financial struggles. They were facing issues with costs or with sales, but just as often it could have been personality struggles. And I'm an outsider, so I couldn't tell. If I told someone to jump, no one ever asked me how high. If I told them to push a button, they would just look at me and say, "You push the button." I had to convince them that it was in their interest to move in a certain direction or not, and to bring people together. So I had a number of rules as I tried to convene people to address the challenges we face. One rule was that everyone should give each other the benefit of the doubt and the space to work on communicating whatever they're trying to say until they get it right. So oftentimes, and this does not work in politics, I don't get this same permission when I'm out on the stump. But when we're talking and I may say something that I think means what I want it to mean, but you may hear it in a different way, what I'm asking you to do is let me say it again until we're both in the same place and saying the same things. So we need to be able to do that. Whether it's New Dems or progressives, to talk to each other and make sure we're speaking the same language first, and that we're hearing what the other's trying to convey. The second piece is that understand everyone is coming to where they are, having given it thought and consideration, and that we draw our conclusions from the assumptions we make. So if you disagree with my conclusion, it's probably because I'm starting from a different assumption than you have. And so if we have a conversation, this gets into the family conversations, it gets into that, how you get past the evasion from where we're coming. Let's talk about the assumptions we start with, and let's get to a place where we start with the same assumptions. And now let's work towards those conclusions. And we can deal with a lot of really difficult issues in that way. We can deal with, I mentioned that our party is unified now on marriage equality, that it's no longer an issue. When I first got into politics, it was an issue 15 years ago. And, people were going through the process. Well, if same-sex couples get married, what does that do to what was called traditional marriage? And so you had the conversation of, well, we'll have civil unions. It's different. And then people say, well, why is it different? And at the end of the day, we got to the place where love is love. Who you love doesn't affect whom I love. The partnership someone else has next door across the street doesn't relate to how. And all of a sudden, it was the young generation who came to us and said, your assumptions are wrong. Let's reset the assumptions and look where it takes us and look where we are. That's a relatively easy one. We need to talk about that when we're talking about immigration. We need to talk about it when we're talking about making sure everyone has health care. We need to talk about it. We're talking about how do we make sure everyone gets to the education they need to succeed in life. And that's one where we talk about, does everyone need a bachelor's degree to be successful? Well, some people are going to do better going on a different path, whether it's the military or into the trades. And some people are going to stay in education. I want my doctors not just to have a bachelor's degree, I want them to have a medical degree. And I want the specialists to have the fellowship. So if it takes them longer, it takes them longer. There's different ways to do it.
Yeah. I think I just sometimes struggle with the notion that Democrats are unwilling to agree to disagree on things. I love the note about, start with the same assumptions on where you're coming from, right? Because if you're both coming from a place of, I love America, I love my country, I love this community, I love all communities, I love my family, I love all of our families, then I think that does, level the playing field. But I do think that we struggle with ensuring that, at the end of the day, if you are disagreeing with someone in your caucus or someone who's a voter about something that you find as a fundamental value, then we just find ourselves kind of like, struggling a little bit.
Yeah, if you're coming from a different place, it doesn't make you a bad person. And so we have to be able to agree to disagree. At its biggest level, the difference between, I would say, Democrats and those who are opposed to us is the future a zero-sum game, a shrinking pie, where we can't create more opportunities for more people? Or is the future boundless? Can we create opportunities for people to pursue their aspirations? And do we need everyone on board? So you see those who are screaming at us the most, screaming at Democrats the most, are screaming about this view that there's a place for everyone, that all are equal, that all are, now I'm going to use my own faith tradition, but we're all created in the image of our maker, and that there is dignity and beauty and spirit. I don't care how you identify. I don't care where you come from. What I care is that you're going to join us in pushing this country forward, and that together you'll find your path and I'll find my path. That's the Democratic message, and that's a New Dem message. That's a progressive message. But I think New Dems focus on how do we create those opportunities, open the pathways to success, make sure that the economy is growing and creating well-paying jobs, that our communities are getting stronger, safer, wonderful places to live, and that the nation remains safe and secure. We're doing our job.
So going back to something we just talked about a minute ago, but it's very possible Democrats reclaim a House majority in 2026, right? We swing back and forth, right? So what pitfalls should the left avoid if we win in 2026 that could hurt our party in a presidential election year like 2028?
I would say the first thing is we've got to make sure that the pendulum, which has gone way too far, and I think that's the backlash against Elon Musk, who thinks he's self-appointed king, oligarch, whatever term you want to use, we don't swing it back too far the other way. Right? That we recognize that, again, what I said before, I run as a Democrat, but I'm elected to represent everyone in the 10th District of Illinois. We may win the majority, but we have a responsibility to hear and represent the entire country, and that it's not run forward to the exclusion. We see this what the Republicans are doing. They've stiff-armed the Democrats. If they don't get their way, look at this week. We came into session Monday night at 6:30. By 1:30, when the Republicans didn't get when Speaker Johnson didn't get his way, he literally threw a temper tantrum and locked the door and said, we're done for the week. Right? We've got work we should be doing. Congress should be in session today and tomorrow and getting the stuff, the business of the American people done. We need to focus on the business of the American people, recognize that we can't do everything all at once. We should lay out that this is our plan. These are our priorities, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll start with the first one. We'll methodically move forward, and that there's a place for certainly everyone within our caucus, and that we are not excluding the Republicans. We're welcoming them to join us as we move the country forward.
Nice. And then to extend the exercise, say Democrats are in the majority, And New Dems are obviously the largest caucus of Democrats. What is the vision for Democrats in the majority? Like, what are we focusing on? What is the left going to champion? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
That's easy. We're going to focus on exactly what New Dems put out on our platform. We've got to make sure that the economy is working for everybody. We're clearing obstacles and creating pathways for people to achieve their own success, that they have a confidence that not only will they be able to make ends meet, to provide a home for their family, healthcare and education for the kids, and a secure retirement, but they're going to do it in a way that is an upward path, not a harder struggle. We've got to make sure that our communities are safe and secure, that people are healthy, they have access to quality care. But quality care also is reflected in access to good grocery stores, parks where people can play, schools where kids can learn, and just basically the finer things of life for everybody. And it's making sure that America remains strong, safe, and secure. Land of the free, home of the brave kind of stuff. The message the New Dems are talking about now and have been talking about for a long time is the message that I think we should be talking about when we retake the majority in 2026.
Absolutely. All right, Congressman, this is our last question, and this is the question we ask every guest. What is an activity our listeners can do to help depolarize our politics?
Sit in your backyard with your neighbors and talk to each other about what's important to them. Not just neighbors who think like you, but neighbors who think differently than you. And understand that at the core, I think all of us, or certainly most of us, want to make sure that we're giving our kids the chance to be happy, to be healthy, to be successful, that within that, we can have loving families and safe communities, and that if we work together, think about if you're in a rural community and a storm comes in and knocks down a barn, the community got together for a barn raising. If you're in a community and there's expected bad weather at home today in Chicago, that if someone's house gets damaged by a tree, neighbors invite their neighbors to come and stay with them. That when people go hungry, people rush to the food banks to make sure that everyone has a meal for the holiday. That's who we are as a country. And so we need to be talking to each other. So I guess the short answer is break bread with people who don't think the same way you do.
I love it. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Congressman. It was so nice to speak with you today. I really appreciate your time and hope you have an awesome rest of your day.
Thank you. It was a good conversation.